Hello y'all, welcome back to Case Can Probably Read. My name is Casey and that is not my fault. I did it! Not only did I finish the Asian Readathon challenge this year, now I'm even going to make a video about it. This is what growth looks like. So for those of you who do not know, Asian Readathon is a yearly challenge that is hosted by Read with Cindy. It is a month-long reading marathon dedicated to reading books by Asian authors. This year's Asian Readathon challenge was loosely based around the 2023 movie Joyride that's going to come out, I think, later this summer. Last year's challenge was based on the Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it was a lot of fun. The twist with this challenge is you can combine any of the challenges. That meant you could knock out more than one of the challenges, of which there are 5, with a single book if you wanted to. You could even read one book that met all the challenges and that would still count. The twist is each of the books that you read has to feature a character or author of a different Asian ethnicity to encourage cultural diversity. So today all I'm going to do is quickly go through each of the 5 challenges and briefly talk about which book I read to meet that challenge. This is one of my favorite challenges to participate in every year. It's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to keep going as a booktuber, because I really like the idea of, during AAPI month, of reading Asian books. This is my 3rd year to try to participate in this challenge. The first year I tried just completely fell flat. I didn't finish most of the books that I had planned to read. Last year I did manage to meet all 5 of the challenges, but I never finished making a video about them. And so this year I finished all the challenges and here we are. Just give me a moment. I'm really proud of myself. Anyhow, let's go ahead and let's get to talking about these challenges. Challenge number 1 is read a book written by an Asian author. The book I chose to use for this prompt was Sinner's Gin by Rhys because Rhys is native Hawaiian. If you want to know a little bit more about what this book is about, you can watch my last weekly update video. It's kind of a more gritty sort of romance mystery, like police drama. The main character is also Asian. I read the second one in that series, which was Whiskey and Rye. That one's going to be in my next weekly wrap up. And I actually just started the 3rd book in that series, which I think is called Tequila Mockingbird. I really like this series so far. Like, I'm getting pretty far into it and I would definitely recommend to it. It is a little grittier, darker, definitely more graphic than other romances that I've read. I wouldn't call it a dark romance, but it's just a little grittier and bloodier than some of the other more feel-good ones that I've read. Yeah. The second prompt in the Asian Readathon challenge is read a book featuring a friendship between at least 2 Asian characters. And so for that one, I read Appeal by Cathy Yardley. This was also part of a series, the Ponto Beach Reunion series. And this one followed Vinh Doan and Emily, I can't remember what her last name is. But they were the 3rd couple that was featured in this series. And it was a second chance romance. They had dated when they were kids and then broke up, and then in adulthood they kind of get put back together. So Vinh is Vietnamese, and the last book that was in the series followed his sister, and that was a friends to lovers romance. And so his sister is Vietnamese, and then the first book in the series actually followed two Asian characters that were YouTubers. It was kind of an enemies to lovers romance. And so the thread of this series is they're all following these people that were in this high school friend group. So the friend group is pretty central to the series, and so it was also pretty central to this story. And the friend group is pretty diverse. And so that is why I chose this one for this prompt, because any of those books in the series could fit this one. All right, on to the third prompt. Read a book written by an Asian author and or featuring an Asian character that shows them going on an adventure. And for that one, I chose Ghost of Deceit by Alice Winters. I don't know what ethnicity Alice Winters is, but one of the main characters in this romance was Japanese American. It was a cop and like a medium psychic that were the main couple in this book. And the medium psychic is the Japanese American character. I've actually been working on this series for a while. This is the third book in that series. This is kind of like a series of like police mysteries. And so every single book is him going on an adventure. He's getting, shot at, kidnapped, who knows? So it fit the bill. All right. The fourth prompt was read a book written by an Asian author and or featuring an Asian character that is focused on identity and self-discovery. So I actually read two books for this prompt. I'm going to talk about the first one, which was Origin by A.J. Sherwood and Jocelynn Drake. I've read books by A.J. Sherwood before. I like A.J. Sherwood on the whole. I've never read Jocelynn Drake. But this is the beginning of a series that is basically about dragon shifters, kind of. It doesn't really have a lot of the tropes I think that shifter romance necessarily have, but it's more of a fantasy romance. But this one features dragons, and in this particular, it's like an alternate universe where dragons and mages existed a long time ago. If we were the people in this world, we would assume that dragons and mages were real at one time, but they no longer are because they all got wiped out in this great giant war. Well, the main characters are Ulrich, who is actually a dragon, who has been living in secret with his clan, the Fire Clan of Dragons in Germany. And these dragons have assumed that all mages have just been wiped out. And the only way that they can, I guess, make more little baby dragons is if dragons mate with mages. And so they've been spending hundreds of years searching for mages that they can mate with to make more dragons. And the book starts when they discover a mage who has come to their town for this like yearly festival. His name is Cameron Park. He's Korean American, and he's kind of doing like a trip abroad before he begins his career working as a mechanical engineer. So him and Ulrich come together, and Cameron discovers that he's a mage and kind of fights it at first, but he's also really excited to learn that he can do magic. I had a really hard time getting through this book. I had actually started this one, I think last month. When I started it, it was an interesting story. I really liked the fantasy aspect of this book. This is one of those rare times where I liked the magic, but I didn't super care about the romance at all. It wasn't because one of the characters was a damsel in distress or didn't have any agency or were just kind of flat. The characters were kind of fine. I kind of wonder if it's because I forced myself to keep reading when I had already kind of checked out of the book. When I hit the 50% mark, it was kind of cooking along pretty well. So I thought, well, I'll just finish the book. It was a strange phenomenon. I think I just really wanted the book to be over, and every page I turned where there was more story on the other side of it, I just kind of got angrier and angrier. So that's really not the fault of this book. It it just, I don't have really any explanations for you. It was a fine book. It was an interesting book. I kind of like the idea of how the dragons and the mages have to, you know, come together, because it didn't get too like Omega-versy or shifter romancy. It was more like a fantasy story, which I really liked because I understand those tropes better than I understand like shifter romance tropes. And I can't tell you why I didn't enjoy this book as much as I had hoped I would. I just didn't. I think maybe it's because I've come to expect certain things from A.J. Sherwood's writing. This book just had a different flavor than what I'm used to getting from A.J. Sherwood, and I didn't love it as much. The other book that I read for this prompt was This Way Out by Tufayel Ahmed. Tufayel Ahmed is a Bengali author, and the main character in this story is a Bengali man. I've already talked about this one in one of my weekly wrap-ups from earlier in the month, and so I explained that one in a little bit more detail, but I would say that of all of the Asian adjacent books that I've read this month, this one was by far my favorite. A lot of times you don't necessarily have these touchstones where you can relate to a character in a book, which you don't always want that because sometimes it's all about the escapism. But in this particular book, I did have some touchstones with this character, the main character, where I could really see where they were coming from. Especially with the brownness of the main character and dealing with, you know, family members that are not brown. So that was, like I said, by far my favorite Asian Readathon book that I did this year. This one really fit this prompt because it really was about the main character finding, kind of carving out their identity in so many different ways. Who they were as a gay man, who they were as a fiance, who they were as a, you know, a Muslim, who they were as a son, as a sibling, who they were as a Bengali immigrant to England. So that one was really good. And finally, your challenge number 5 is read a book featuring an Asian character who is either a hot mess, famous, or eccentric. And for that one, I read Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Q. Sutanto. And I, again, talked about this in an earlier weekly wrap-up. But this book was just so much fun. It's very lighthearted and just kind of, it might be what you would call a comedy of errors. I'm going to have to look up that term and make sure I don't sound stupid. But it's just one of those things where everything goes wrong, nothing goes right, but in the end we still get a wedding. I read the first one, Dial A for Aunties, and I know that there's a second one. I haven't read it, but I recommended this book to my mom earlier this month, and she went and she read both of them. She loved them so much. I would say the main character of this one is a hot mess because she's really trying to figure out her life, because it is a big mess when it starts out. And really, her entire family is eccentric. It's just her and her aunties running this wedding business, and they're all very unique, every single one of her aunties. And so it was just a really fun read. If you come from a family that has a lot of strong women in it, then I feel like it's a dynamic that you would understand. And it's fun. It was fun. It was funny. Yeah. That's all. I did it. I'm really proud of myself. This is technically like starting my 3rd year on BookTube, even though I've not been present for much of that. But this is going to be the first time that I've actually finished Asian Readathon and that I've actually debriefed on Asian Readathon. So I'm genuinely proud of that. So I know I'm saying a lot of funny things about that, but I actually do feel pride within myself that I have managed to accomplish that. But that's all I got for you today. If my brand of awkward appeals to you, please feel free to like this video, subscribe to my channel, or follow me on social media, which I will list below. And until next time, don't force yourself to read a book you don't really want to read. I mean, you can, but why? Just my 2 cents. Bye.